Peace and greetings to the East family. Welcome to our Light Network. I'm your host, Brother Majesty Montanez, here with our co-host, Brother Righteous. And on today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is why Abraham Lincoln is looking the other way on the penny. So before we get into our discourse dealing with this subject, we're going to be touching upon a lot of very interesting points. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background as to when I personally came into this information, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an image up on the screen just so I could, give the viewers and audience a better understanding of what I'm talking about, or what we'll be talking about today. Okay, cool. So on the screen, you see the title of our video for today, or our subject, and you also see a picture of a penny beside a nickel, beside a dime, beside a quarter. Thank you, Brother Righteous, for sure. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background, right? Because this is our subject. Why is Abraham Lincoln looking the other way on a penny? All right, when I first came into this information, I was about, I want to say maybe 14 years old, 15 years old. And I had a friend, a childhood friend, who was like my brother, basically. People considered us brothers in the neighborhood, or that they thought we were biological brothers, but really he was, one of my best friends. So when I used to hang out with him, I quickly realized that he came from a Masonic family. His mother was an Eastern Star, and his grandfather was a Prince Mason. So the reason I was aware of that is, in my household when I was a child, my stepfather used to have certain books laying around the house, that I would read. And one of those books was New World Order, which is about Freemasonry, conspiracy theories, etc. That's how I first became familiar with Freemasonry. So fast forward to when I was about 14 or 15 years old. One of my best friends at the time, like I said, I would see his grandfather come around sometimes. And his grandfather was a Prince Hall Mason, and his mother was a Prince Hall Eastern Star. So his aunt, who was not an Eastern Star, she had a little a keepsake box in her house. So I used to be over her house a lot. So she would show me memorabilia, that family relics, basically, that she had in this keepsake box. So in the box, she would have different documents like summonses from her father's Masonic lodge, old dues cards, a Masonic ring, stuff like that, that her father had passed along to her. And he was still alive at the time, but that's like a Masonic custom. Masons tend to, give things to their children, dealing with basically Masonic heirlooms. So my friend's grandfather, when he would come around, he would always have his ring on. He was always in dress clothes. He was an old black guy that used to wear straw hats, slacks, shoes all of the time, the Masonic ring. So he had a certain level of mystique about him dealing with Freemasonry. So in the beginning, I would always ask his daughter, my friend's mother, like, he's a Mason, right? Because I didn't have the nuts to ask him directly. I knew because I would see the ring. So she's like, yeah, my father's a Mason. I'm an Eastern Star. So yeah, my dad's definitely a Mason. So here and there, he would come amongst me and my friend and drop a jewel on us. So one day, he showed me what y'all see on the screen right now, which is the penny next to the nickel, next to the dime, next to the quarter. So he laid these coins out, right? and he asked us, he's like, do you know why? He basically what he said was, do you notice that George Washington, Franklin Roosevelt, and Thomas Jefferson, do you notice that they're looking to the left when you lay the coins out, as y'all see it on the screen? And do you notice that Abraham Lincoln is looking to the right? He's looking the other way, right? And also there's another coin which we didn't put up, which is the $50, which has JFK on it, and JFK is also looking to the left, right? So JFK is looking to the left also. So he's like, do you notice that Abraham Lincoln is looking to the right? He's looking in the opposite direction. Do you know why that is? So he was on that Masonic mystique level, you know, an old man, and he's telling us this at the young age of 14 and 15. And this started to get me more interested in Freemasonry. I just couldn't join at the time. But these are one of those things that got me really interested in becoming a Freemason, right? I had to wait till I was older to petition and, you know, be initiated. Because like I said, at this time, I'm only about 14 or 15 years old. So he also said, notice that the three presidents on these coins, besides Abraham Lincoln, he said, notice that their coin is made of white metal, and Abraham Lincoln's coin is brown, right? So long story short, we got into a discussion about it. You know, you learn certain things. Well, you remember certain things from school. So it's like, of course, we remembered the history about Abraham Lincoln putting into effect the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves. That led to the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And what we read into it, and Brother Righteous is going to really go deep. I'm just giving y'all some background. What stood out to us was like, yeah, you know what? In that day and age, you know, the racist society of that time, America, I took it as an indirect that Abraham Lincoln is being labeled as a black man, basically, because his coin is brown, right? His coin is brown, and he's looking in the opposite direction as if he turned his back on the plan that the, you know, other presidents have set into motion. He is, if you look at the way these coins are laid out, it looks like Abraham Lincoln turned his back on them, because Abraham Lincoln is looking to the right and they're all looking to the left. And also his coin is a brown coin. How come it's not made of white metal like theirs is, right? So that got my mind stirring at that time. You understand? That really got my mind stirring. My friend, he never really got deeply into masonry. He wanted to become a Mason. Like when I became a Mason, he had asked me to put in a petition for him to join my lodge. He never went to his grandfather, but I never recommended him because I knew that he was not good material for being a Freemason. I think he wanted to be involved more for power reasons, because he had already got involved in the criminal justice system, you know, being arrested and stuff. And his grandfather had stepped in and got him out of jams, as well as his mother, you know, because they're Prince Hall affiliated Masons and Eastern Stars in his family. So anyway, so yeah, that really got my mind stirring right there. So that's what we want to talk about. Another suggestion that came to my mind at that time was, damn, since Abraham Lincoln is looking to the right and they're looking to the left, is that an indirect way of saying he was looking towards the right path? You know what I mean? Like, was the vision that he had correct? Was that the right way to go? And everybody else that you see on these coins, these other presidents, they were in the wrong direction, basically. So we'll start it off with that. We're gonna let Brother Righteous go in. So first, let's just give a little bit of background. But first, let's Brother Righteous summarize a little bit about what you want to talk about or get across to our audience, and then I'll give a short PowerPoint presentation just to give some background about Abraham Lincoln, very short and to the point. So go ahead, brother. let us know a little bit about what you want to talk about tonight, and line with this subject.
All right, so it was about a few years ago where I noticed the same thing, and somebody brought that to my attention too. I don't remember when or where, but it was brought to my attention that, and it probably was on Facebook, that Abraham Lincoln was facing the opposite direction as opposed to the other presidents or the other queens. And
Right.
after that, there wasn't really much talk about why that really was. Now over time, I started to see certain things that put together that kind of give you an idea of why it might be like that, but nothing has been proven as actual fact. So it's going to take a lot of dedicated research, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to come to a final conclusion about why he is facing towards the right. But what I will say is that um, from some of the research I was able to gather, basically what it was is the person who created that particular penny used a portrait, and Abraham Lincoln was already faced in that particular position, and so it was just a
Okay.
verbatim, right? So he was already facing it in that position. The president at the time was kind of just like, yeah, use that one, that's perfect, and that was the way that it went.
Mm-hmm.
So then one would have to question, why did they make the other ones face the other direction? Because based off of what I was able to
Right.
find is that Abraham Lincoln was the first president that was actually on change, on coins, basically, out of all of the presidents. He was the first one. So if he was the first one,
Mm-hmm.
the questions that you have to ask yourself, and when I say you, I'm talking to the audience, is number one, why did um why did the president at the time, I believe it's Roosevelt, not this Roosevelt, but the Theodore Roosevelt, if I'm not mistaken.
Theodore Roosevelt. Okay.
Yeah. Um, why did he select Abraham Lincoln to be the first president selected on a coin, and why did he choose him on a 1 cent coin? Because you think, if you're looking at this
Right.
symbolically, you're dealing with
Now,
the number one, and you're
now,
dealing
now,
with,
check it, bro. Look, check it out, because we're gonna get into that. Don't get me wrong, bro. It's gonna come up in the PowerPoint presentation, because basically you're gonna be taking over, right? But just because a lot of what you're saying here is gonna come up in the PowerPoint presentation, and then you're gonna go in. You know what I mean? And be mindful, because this is a hermetic channel slash Masonic channel. So remember, like I said, the reason we're bringing this up is because we already know that when you're dealing with occultism, there are Masonic symbols, esoteric symbols on our money, all of that. That's doubtless, bro. You know what I mean? So yeah, some of what we're gonna be doing is speculation. Certainly, you know what I mean? So that's why I gave the background about how my friend's grandfather, who was a Freemason, was the first person who taught me about this. I would have never heard anything like this from ordinary civilians. He was a Freemason, so like I said, it got my mind stirring to start looking for the signs. And all, me and Brother Righteous on this type of time, we are active Freemasons, slash occultists. So just give a little bit of a background, Brother Righteous, about what you want to talk about, in line with this subject. And then I'll go into the PowerPoint presentation, and then you'll take over and go into every point.
all right. So some things that I want to highlight
So
for the
you mentioned you're going to talk about this, symbology and what other issues.
yeah. So I'm going to speak about the speculation about whether or not Abraham Lincoln was really considered a brother or African American, black. So I definitely want to touch on that, and give you
Uh-huh.
guys some information about where I got that information from, and what type of conclusion I could come up with based off all the evidence that is out there.
Hmm.
Um, and those are pretty much the points that I want to highlight. And I'll bring it all together with some more information that I have.
And all right. And how about the Emancipation Proclamation? Dealing with uh, President Abraham Lincoln and him,
Oh
putting
yeah,
out the
yeah, yeah,
Emancipation
yeah.
Proclamation. Uh-huh.
So we're gonna touch on that too. We spoke about it before
So
on
to get,
on
tell
one
us,
of the videos, but for the most part, you know that the Emancipation Proclamation, most of you identify that as Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, basically. So I want to go in deep on that about what we let's speculate on what actually happened and what had taken place. Like I said, we touched
mm-hmm,
on it on a previous episode, but we could go ahead and elaborate on it now because this is what the topic is about, Abraham Lincoln, and so it'll give everybody something to think about and some homework to do basically. Maybe you might find something different than what we have, or you might come up with something different or another type of conclusion. But I definitely want to touch on the Emancipation Proclamation, and I also have some pictures that I want to show with in regards to the Emancipation Proclamation, and that was in like the 1860s. Around that particular time is when that was issued out. So we're
right.
going to touch on that right there.
Okay, that sounds excellent, brother. Cool. For the audience, for those who watch this episode later on, of course, leave your thoughts and insight in the comments for sure. If you're a student and if you study, these types of subjects, don't hesitate. Leave your comments, etc. Leave your thoughts on it. So here we're gonna start off with the just a few points, historical points, just to just to get things going and give everybody some background on the subject so that everybody is well informed. And if you have anything you want to add, meaning the viewers and subscribers, don't hesitate. Excuse me, don't hesitate. All is welcome. Okay, so let's start off with a few points. First, Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States of America, right? And when we say that, we're talking about the United States when it became the United States of America. We're not talking about the Articles of Confederation, where we had prior presidents before George Washington and things of that nature. So Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States of America. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12th, 1809, in Kentucky. So he was born in Kentucky in 1809. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th, 1865, by John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was a Freemason who escaped arrest in the Lincoln assassination with the help of fellow Freemasons. Now, for individuals who watch the channel, you could comment on that point if you want, because in traditional history, we're taught that John Wilkes Booth was captured after he assassinated Lincoln and that he was hung publicly. He was given the death penalty and he was hung. However, I don't know if any of our viewers or subscribers watch a brother who his name is Brad Meltzer. Brad Meltzer. He has a channel on YouTube and he also writes a lot of books. So he has a whole episode dealing with the Lincoln assassination. He's dope because he gives you a lot of the hidden signs. He likes to deal with a lot of hidden in plain sight philosophy. So on his channel, he does thorough research. He gives you evidence to back up most of what he says. And he has a whole episode dedicated to the Lincoln assassination. And he shows you that with documented proof that John Wilkes Booth, he escaped. Of course, you had the Confederate government. And the Confederate government, was just rebels to the United States government. So basically, there were government officials in the South who didn't like what Abraham Lincoln was doing. And that's it. They were considered treasonous of the time. So watch his documentary, call it that, dealing with the Lincoln assassination, and your mind will be blown. Because he showed you that John Wilkes Booth, like I said, John Wilkes Booth was a Freemason. And with the help of other Freemasons and people in the Confederate government, he was able to escape. He died of natural causes, if I'm not mistaken. He never went to prison for the Lincoln assassination. He changed his name and whatnot, and he died free. You know, so just keep that in mind. Okay. Some more background. Was Abraham Lincoln a Freemason? Why am I mentioning this? Because I mentioned to you that besides Abraham Lincoln, everybody that you see on these coins, the nickel, the dime, and the quarter, were Freemasons, right? Okay, so we'll get a little bit into that in the PowerPoint presentation. So the question is this: was Abraham Lincoln a Freemason? The answer is no, right? Abraham Lincoln was not a Freemason. However, Abraham Lincoln did petition to become a Freemason. He wanted to be a Freemason. So Abraham Lincoln petitioned Tyrian Lodge number 333 of Illinois in 1860, but later withdrew his petition when he decided to run for president of the United States. Abraham Lincoln was called upon by the Grand Lodge of Illinois during recess of an annual meeting to discuss his decision to withdraw his petition. So in other words, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Illinois at that time summoned Abraham Lincoln before the Grand Lodge and asked him that question, you know, because Abraham Lincoln was popular at the time. He was a well-known politician. So the Grand Lodge of Illinois summoned him and asked him, listen, why are you withdrawing your petition? Do you have any type of malice towards Freemasonry? Like, why would you, do you have a problem with the Freemasons? Why did you withdraw your petition? So during that meeting, Abraham Lincoln told the Masonic Committee, gentlemen, I have always entertained a profound respect for the Masonic fraternity and have long cherished a desire to become a member. So again, Abraham Lincoln is answering up. He's saying, listen, I respect Freemasonry. I've always wanted to be a Freemason. But now I'm going to tell you why I withdrew my petition, right? So Abraham Lincoln continued. This is what he told the Grand Lodge of Illinois. He said, but, meaning although I respect Freemasonry, I am a candidate for political office, and by some, such action might be misconstrued. For this reason, I must, for the present time, refrain. So long story short, what he explained to the Grand Lodge of Illinois is that the reason I'm withdrawing my petition is because I'm running for the presidency of the United States. And if I become a Freemason at this time, much of the public thinks that Freemasonry is a conspiracy to control the world. And I'm giving you the spirit of what Abraham Lincoln told the Grand Lodge of Illinois. So he's like, listen, I'm not withdrawing my petition because I think you know Freemasonry is sinister or anything like that. I just don't want the public to think that if I win the election and whatnot, I'm in the Freemasons' pockets. I'm part of a conspiracy of a new world order. So for the time being, I have to withdraw my petition for the time being because I don't want to be seen in the light of being part of a Masonic conspiracy or using my Masonic affiliation, if I am initiated, as using it to gain votes. You get what I'm saying? So that's the gist of it with Abraham Lincoln. So the answer to the question, was Abraham Lincoln a Freemason? No, he was not, but he did petition to become a member. Okay. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, during the Civil War, right? So at that time, it was 1863 was the third year of the Civil War. It was the third year of the Civil War. Another point to be mindful of is that Abraham Lincoln was also a soldier. He was a soldier and he was a captain in the Civil War, meaning he fought during the Civil War. I want to say for about a year or so, he was engaged in warfare, right? So Abraham Lincoln had military experience. He was a soldier and the captain in that war. So President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, which freed the slaves, quote unquote. And Brother Righteous is going to go into that in a short moment. So the Emancipation Proclamation is what freed the slaves, right? So he issued that proclamation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, during the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln promoted the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which outlawed slavery across the country. This action was a major reason for a hit being placed on him. By that, I mean it played a big part in him subsequently being assassinated, right? So Abraham Lincoln promoted this 13th Amendment. Okay, what does the 13th Amendment say? Meaning the 13th Amendment of our Constitution. Here's what the 13th Amendment says. Pay attention. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So to put that in layman terms, and we're going to get back to this when Brother Righteous gives his light and insight to us on this whole subject matter. In layman terms, the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. That's what happens with that. So slavery becomes illegal except for punishment for being convicted of a crime. So if you're convicted of a crime, what the 13th Amendment tells you is that if you are convicted of a crime at any time, even up to this day, now slavery and involuntary servitude is legal for you. So when individuals go to prison for a crime, you have what is called slave wages that you are paid. For individuals who don't know about the industrial prison complex system, when individuals are in jail, they have to participate in involuntary servitude. If not, they're disciplined in the prison, meaning they'll be sent to the box, which is 23-hour lockdown, etc. So when people are convicted of crimes and they go to jail, you work for what is called slave wages. So if you work in the mess hall, let's say, serving cooking the prison meals and serving the prison meals, you get paid slave wages, 15 cents an hour, things like that. You can ask anybody who you may know who was in prison, and they'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. So that's what the 13th Amendment tells you. Slavery is illegal now, but it is legal for people who have been convicted of a crime. So if you find yourself on the wrong side of the law and get convicted of a crime and sent to prison, you are now legally a slave. According to the United States Constitution, you are a slave at that point. So far as while you're doing your prison sentence or serving your prison sentence, Okay. Abraham Lincoln was first placed on the penny in 1909 to commemorate the 100th year after his birth. Remember, Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 in Kentucky. So 1909 is 100 years, the 100th year anniversary of his birth, right? So he was placed on the penny in 1909. And as Brother Righteous said, he's the first president to be placed on a coin. Before Abraham Lincoln was on a penny, you had a different type of a penny. Let's put it that way, right? Okay, cool. So keep that in mind. Okay, on the image you see on the screen, you see Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is on the nickel, right? He's on the nickel. So Thomas Jefferson was first placed on the nickel in 1938. He is believed to have been a Freemason and a Rosicrucian. I say he is believed to have been because there are no surviving lodge records or documentation to show that Thomas Jefferson was actually a Freemason. But many Masonic historians and many students of Freemasonry believe he was a Freemason because there's circumstantial evidence to suggest that he was. And people have to be mindful of that. When you're dealing with men who lived in the 1700s and 1800s, when you're dealing with Freemasonry, stop thinking that there are surviving documents of everything. There are fires that destroy things. Sometimes people's family heirlooms get lost. You know what I mean? So Thomas Jefferson is believed to have been a Freemason and a Rosicrucian. Personally, I believe he was a Freemason, and I also believe he was a Rosicrucian, just based on his writings, the things he studied, the things he published, etc. In other words, it's very clear that Thomas Jefferson was a philosopher, or a natural philosopher, rather. Okay. Franklin D. Roosevelt, who you see on the dime. Franklin D. Roosevelt was first placed on the dime in 1946. He was also a Freemason. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he was certainly a Freemason. We know that because there's documented evidence that survives, as well as photos of him in Masonic regalia, etc. So he was like George Washington in that he was one of those zealous Freemasons that you would see participating in Masonic activities while he served as president. Meaning you would see him with his apron on in public venues and, just promoting the fraternity. All right. So that's important to note. Okay. George Washington, who you see George Washington on the quarter, right? And also, that he's on the $1 bill, which is full of Masonic symbolism, doubtless. So George Washington was first placed on the quarter in 1932. He was also a Freemason, and that is well known, that is irrefutable. Okay? So, with all of those points in mind, what we're going to do now is let Brother Righteous go into his presentation, and I'll repost some of those PowerPoints as he goes along as necessary. So go ahead, Brother Righteous. You talked about how you're going to talk about, we're going to speculate the main subject, why is Abraham Lincoln looking the other way on the penny? You're going to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation, right? The freeing of the slaves, everything dealing with that, the political significance of it, the lessons we can glean from that historically, the accuracy of it, and also was Abraham Lincoln black? We're going to talk about that too. So go ahead, my brother. Do your thing, man.
All right. So, what's common is that most people, the first time that this information about Abraham Lincoln being black, we're going to start off with that. The first time that was released to the public was during the Hidden Colors documentary. And most of you may have seen the Hidden Colors documentary directed by Tariq Nasheed. And so it speaks about some of the propaganda posters that were placed up when he was running for presidency. And it would show him. Matter of fact, I got a picture of it. Let me switch over to that picture. Let me see. Let me zoom this out so I can switch the picture. All right, there we go, right there. So if you look at that picture right there, let me see if I can zoom in on it.
Wait, what are you talking about first? Whether he was black?
Right. So that's what I'm starting with, where this information came from.
You going? Maybe, bro, you should talk about not telling you how to present it, but maybe you should talk about the Emancipation Proclamation thing first. The significance of that, because then it's more linear in the sense that it'll probably strengthen what you're gonna present in terms of whether he was black or not.
Okay, so let's start off with that. The Emancipation Proclamation is that 13th Amendment is a bit confusing for a lot of black people because they don't read it in its full totality, so they don't understand it. The first thing you hear is, "Oh, he freed the slaves." So when you dive into it and you break it apart, there's a couple things to look at here. Now, the first part is what the common man knows. Oh, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves through the Emancipation Proclamation. That's what most African Americans in America know. That's what they teach in public school right now. So that's what's accepted as truth. But they don't go into, like I said, they don't go into it and dive into it completely. So the speculation is that the reason why he produced this Emancipation Proclamation was because he wanted to transform the form of slavery that we had, because he understood that if the United States government was to allow slavery in the form that they had it, as far as the South whipping the slaves and molesting them and raping them and stuff like that, just brutal treatment. he understood that more rebellions would take place, basically. And so what he wanted to do was change the
Mm-hmm.
idea of how people viewed slavery or how the South viewed slavery. See, the South, which we call the Confederacy, they was kind of just like, nah, we don't want to change this the way we have it. We like it the way that it is. But in the North, things are changing from an industrial perspective. Everything is changing. So Abraham Lincoln is kind of like, we have to change. We can't keep doing it the same way because one, you messing with the flow of money and the things that we're trying to do with this particular country. So obviously, as you know, Confederacy was like, we don't want to hear that shit. What up? What's good? And so they went to war. Now, what you have to note too, and you can look it up because they're like history.com and explain it to you, and .gov websites, they'll explain it to you that when Abraham Lincoln set or passed the bill Congress had to pass the bill, but when he wrote up or put out the Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment, it was only regarding the states that he had no federal control over, basically. So it didn't account for all the states that were already underneath the Union control, if that makes any sense. So like the neighboring states that didn't necessarily acknowledge slavery, but they still had slaves. We're talking about the brutal treatment of the South and the Confederacy. So he was regulating that for the Confederacy as we know it, basically Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. You get it. You know what I'm saying? So he was regulating the slavery from that perspective, saying, yo, listen, y'all got to change the way that y'all doing this. So another thing that to look at too is just the word emancipation. And if you look it up in a dictionary, like I have an app and I wanted to, I use the dictionary app, but I also use the Oxford Dictionary, but I wanted to give y'all a definition of emancipate. And one of the definitions that they spoke about was emancipate says to free, but there's another definition that says to transfer ownership. That's the part that a lot of people look over. And it's a play on words, semantics, and all of that. So when you're dealing with emancipate,
Okay.
it means to transfer
Real,
ownership.
real quick, bro. What is the primary meaning of emancipation? I say this because you have to remember, bro, not this channel is educational. We can't take it for granted that everybody knows what a word means. Just like emancipation, most people don't use that word in modern times. Think about it. The only time I personally hear the word emancipation is in reference to the Emancipation Proclamation. So first,
Nice.
brother, what is the common, definition of emancipation, the common one or primary meaning?
If you're using the regular dictionary app, it has it listed as to free from restraint, influence, or the like.
Mm.
To free a person
Okay,
from
so
bondage or slavery.
okay, cool.
And
All right, so emancipation, that's cool. Emancipation, the primary meaning is to free somebody, right? Basically, to give someone their freedom, as you said, or to release them from slavery. Now, go back to that other definition that you said again. It's another definition of the word. And does it tell you, like in the dictionary, does it tell you the context of that? Yeah, like is that like what it means in terms of business is what I'm saying?
So I'm going to break it down from what I see right here. So I'm explaining it
Okay.
that way because I'm using the dictionary app. So right here, number
Right.
one, the first definition is to free from restraint, influence, or the like. Second definition is to free, in parentheses, a person from bondage or slavery. And in the third definition, it starts off by saying Roman and civil law to terminate paternal control over. So some people have defined that as transfer of ownership. When you terminate in the paternal control over, there's still some form of control, but it's not the control that was once there. Basically, it's moving out of that particular control into another type of control. It doesn't state that what type of control it's moving into, and that's, I think, the aspect or the point that obviously the common man doesn't know because they haven't investigated it as per public school. What they teach us, you don't learn this in public school. Emancipate, like Brother Majesty had me go over, is to free, to liberate from bondage or from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's what most of us know it as, or the common man knows it as.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another aspect to it of exterminating the paternal control or transferring ownership, basically. So it's kind of like that silent
Right.
meaning.
Right. So basically, I say this because remember, like in Freemasonry, grammar is one of the 7 liberal arts. As a Freemason, you're
Definitely.
supposed to study linguistics. You're supposed to study grammar. You're supposed to understand the difference between a verb, a noun, a pronoun, an adjective, etc., as well as the context in which a word is used. So it's interesting what Brother Rice is saying because, for example, if you study law, and in our jurisdiction, you do have to study some basic law. You have to. It's mandatory in our jurisdiction. You don't have to pass the bar, but you do have to study basic law, state law as well as federal law, so that this way you're not a sitting duck. How could you be operating in a society and you don't know the laws that govern the society? That's a foolish way to navigate through through the land in which you live, right? That's foolish. So I do know, like, for example, in like let's say you have any of the publications a Black's Law Dictionary, for example, which is a popular law dictionary. In line with what Brother Rice is saying, when it comes to legalese, right, law, words tend to take on a different meaning. And by that, what we're saying is if you're in a courtroom, for example, what a word may mean in ordinary English, it will not mean that in the courtroom. It will have a different meaning.
Right.
So looking at a word like emancipation, I mentioned Black's Law Dictionary just because it's a good reference. You
Yeah, I
may
got
look
one.
up
I got one right here.
a word like emancipation, Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, I got one right here. Yeah.
That could you look up emancipation in there?
Let me see. I'm looking for it now.
Yeah, so these types of things are important because I get where the brother's going with it. And let's try our best to tie this into our main subject. Why is Abraham Lincoln looking the other way on the penny? And also, why is the penny brown? We'll get there. Why is the penny brown and the other coins are made of white metal? So that's why we're bringing up a lot of these points,
So Emancipation, this is the first edition of the Black Laws Dictionary. If y'all want to get a copy of that, this right now is running for like $200. That's how much I got it for. The prices may have went down, but if you want to grab you one, it's a good thing to have. It is 11 editions out, I think, right now. So I plan to get all of them. But Emancipation in its first edition is defined as the act by which one who was unfree or under the power and control of another is set at liberty and made his own master. In Roman law, the enfranchisement of a son by his father, which was anciently done by the formality of an imaginary cell. This was abolished by the Justinian, who substituted the simpler proceeding of a manumission before the magistrate. In Louisiana, it says the emancipation of minors is especially recognized and regulated by law. And it has a definition in England. The term emancipation has been borrowed from the Roman law and is constantly used in law of parochial settlements or parochial settlements. So the term comes from Roman law, basically. That's its original from the formality of this word emancipate comes from Roman law. And as per Roman law here, enfranchisement of a son by his father, which was anciently done by the formality of an imaginary cell. And then on this one, it says to exterminate paternal control over on this dictionary app. Emancipate. So again, that's
Right.
the
So
Black Laws Dictionary
so
first
in
edition.
essence, from a legal perspective, right? And we'll get into the economic aspect of it. I see where you're going, brother. So from a legal aspect, what happens is that at that time, African Americans, generally speaking, not other blacks, because there are other so-called blacks, right, in this country, even at that time. So African Americans, generally speaking, were wards of the state, basically, right? They're,
Correct.
they're, they're basically like children. Basically, they were seen as children in the eyes of the government. So in legal terms, to emancipate them was to sever that parentage and to let the child go. You mentioned it on Black's Law Dictionary, the concept of making a man his own master, through
Right.
emancipation. So basically what happens is that now the African American sector of American society, now the government saying, you are now the masters of yourself. You're not our kids anymore. We're not taking care of you anymore. You got to go and get it for yourself. And I'm pretty sure everybody knew, not everybody does, not everybody studies sharecropping, what was going on in the South. If you watch the movie Roots, they give you a little bit of good insight on that. When the word came through about the Emancipation Proclamation, and most of the slaves in the South were very happy about it. Like, yeah, we're free. A lot of them didn't believe it. Like, huh? Then they had to deal with the issue that Brother Righteous mentioned, where states want to have their sovereign rights. The purpose of the federal government is to not rule the states, but to be like a sort of a mediator between the 50 states. So at that time, the problem became obviously that a lot of these southern states were like, we don't give two shits what Abraham Lincoln is saying. Come get it in blood. We're not letting these people go. Meaning, you're saying it, but we're not going to do it. So by the same token, a lot of southern regions did cooperate, and what wound up happening was the movie Roots depicts this. When the slaves were free, quote unquote, a lot of them, it was like a 10-minute joy. Basically, you dancing, you're cheering, like, hell yeah, finally I'm not a slave anymore. But then the celebration goes down because, as the movie Roots depicted, now they're huddled up like, damn, how are we gonna get money? Because there's still discrimination. We're free, but we're broke. You know what I'm saying? How are we gonna, damn, I don't think this is such a good idea. I think I want to go back to being a child. This is really what happened. I think I want to go back into being a child of the state because I can't make it on my own. So look at it this way. Let's say you take your 12-year-old son or daughter and you just kick him out the house and you say, listen, go get it on your own now. Go get your own apartment, or go get your own house. Go get your own car. You gotta make it. You good. You're no longer under my guardianship. What do you think most kids are gonna do? Most kids are gonna cry and beg to come back home. Trust me. Because after a few hours of being on the streets with no money in their pocket, no way to make a living, reality is gonna hit them. Like, I can't survive, man. Mommy, daddy, please let me back in the house. I'm sorry. I swear I will never go against you again, right? So this was the type of situation that happened with the Emancipation Proclamation. So from what I know of it, the Southern rulers, they said, you know what? What we're going to create is sharecropping. We're going to let our former slaves, we're going to give them the opportunity. Listen, do you want to continue to live with me on my land? You won't technically be a slave, but what'll happen is this. I'll let you tend to my field, raise crop, and you could keep a portion of the crop. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge you rent. I'm going to charge you for supplies, et cetera, et cetera. And when a lot of the slaves agreed to sharecropping, what wound up happening in essence, and the movie Roots depicts this, is that they wound up putting themselves in debt. And another thing you have to be mindful of, that most of the slaves couldn't read because reading was illegal. Whereas the businessmen who were entering into this contract of sharecropping with the former slaves, they did know how to read and write. So they would put these little clauses in the contracts, and guess what? If it's on paper, it's going to stand up in court. The former slaves had a hard time because they couldn't read the contracts. They didn't know how to read, most of them. So they were just going off of word of mouth. And what wound up happening is that, in essence, like I said, the movie Roots depicts this. A lot of the former slaves wound up in heavy financial debt from sharecropping, and in turn, they became financial slaves. Just like I would say most Americans are today, not just blacks, but most Americans, because if you owe me money, even though you're free physically, what in your right mind makes you think I'm not your master? If you owe me $15,000 and you walking around, free and thinking that I don't own you, you got another thing coming. Because why would I be letting you walk around owing me $15,000? In my book, I own you until you pay me my money back. So that's just some background. But go ahead, brother, go into that, and let's try to keep it on in line rather with, why is Abraham Lincoln on the penny? You know what I mean? Or why is he looking the other way on the penny? Why is the penny brown and the other pennies are white metal? So go ahead, bro.
All right, so we got the Emancipation Proclamation out the way, right? And again, some people speculate that it was really genuine, and some people speculate that it was a transfer of ownership. And what I mean by transfer of ownership is, if you look at the system that we have today when it comes to working and stuff like that, even though you're not in the prison industrial complex, meaning working for cheap wages, you still are in a sense. But look at it from this perspective: if you're working for $7.25 per hour, that's cheap wages. If you're working for like $15 an hour, that's cheap wages. They tax you. If you look at your tax statements when you get your pay stub, you get in your state, your city, your county, whatever, they're taxing you. And so what it was, if you pay attention to around this time, 1865, it's when he got assassinated. In the 1860s, you have these guys, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all of them. They're trying to formulate this Federal Reserve Bank and this IRS or whatever. And Abraham Lincoln was pretty much another one of those presidents that was trying to, like, so-called keep it out. Again, you would have to be there to be able to prove it as actual fact. All we have is documents. That's a paper trail. But he was trying to institute what we call a greenback or whatever. So he's known for doing a lot of monumental things, but his stance on all these particular things wasn't necessarily in line. So, for instance, what I mean by that is he brought up the 13th of he got the 13th Amendment passed basically through Congress. But Abraham Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist. And you could go look this information up for yourself. Always do your due diligence, always go do your research behind whatever we say. He wasn't for slavery, but he really wasn't for racial equality either. You know what I'm saying? So,
So hold up. So Abraham Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist, you said, correct?
right. He wasn't an abolitionist, nah.
So I do know he was a Republican, though, right? Correct?
Yeah, he was a Republican.
All right, so that's interesting. So Abraham Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist. So then what motive would he have? Because then that's, to me, that's a red flag for the motive of you freeing the slaves. Even though, to my knowledge, in that era, right? In that era, they call it the era of the ancestors or whatever. I do know that most blacks supported being Republican, and I do know at that time, like, the Democrats were pro-slavery at that time. Historically, I've looked into it, and the Republicans were like anti-slavery. So, but that still doesn't mean you had to be an abolitionist. I get that, because obviously there were plenty of Republicans in the South too. So what you just stated there, for me, that would be a red flag. Like, hold on, if this guy is not an abolitionist,
Why would
what
he
the hell
run the
was your
13th Amendment?
right? Well, what's your motive? Is there some type of a secret motive behind that?
And so, but see, that's the part where I was stating how, all right, with the way that the system was, as far as we had the slaves in the field picking the cotton, we had the slaves that were basically harvesting all of the crops. Around this time, which I have read up on, is that the industrial revolution was taking place. So places like New York City is starting to boom, Baltimore is
Right.
starting to erect, Philadelphia is starting to erect. All these places are starting to like rise, but the way that they're handling crops is much different from the South. So the
Right.
South was stuck to the traditional way, but it wasn't bringing in enough money, if that makes any
Hmm.
sense. So now Abraham Lincoln is like, if we don't change the way that we move our crops or handle our particular business, then we're going to bankrupt the country. So he kind of didn't even have a choice. And so if you read some of the articles like on history.com, they explained it in depth how he wasn't an abolitionist, but it was kind of like a chess move. Like, if I don't do this, this is going to mess the country up. So I have to basically pass this 13th Amendment because it's messing up the economy bad. And the Confederacy wasn't trying to hear that. So, and if you go more into it, you'll find out that he wasn't even for like racial equality. He wasn't really like, according to history.com, he didn't believe in racial equality in the political system. So he didn't believe that blacks had the same rights as what you would call a white. And I'm gonna read a couple of quotes right here.
I mean,
Uh
now listen. I don't think anybody would think that because that's what wasn't the law. So I don't think anybody that was alive at that time would even think that they had equality because clearly they didn't. So, and what you just stated, bro, which they're good points, right? Because we want to try to drive the points home. Um, you mentioned that you mentioned the economic aspect of it, right?
right.
And that brought to my mind, like in the movie Roots, and in the episode that deals with the Emancipation Proclamation. I do remember that the cotton growers, that's what you would call them. They're growing cotton. The Caucasians who ran these plantations. When they stepped to the freed slaves, they were like, "Listen, I can't pay you much." That's how the movie's depicting it. It's like I can't pay you much. So that makes sense what you're saying. When they offered them to do the sharecropping. So that makes sense. The industrial revolution and stuff like this, being spawned at that time. But I also want to pay attention to that clause in the 13th Amendment where it states, because remember what you're getting at, brother, is that there was an economic motive behind freeing the slaves, right? That's pretty
Right.
much what you're getting at. So in the 13th Amendment, which is on the screen, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So even though the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, we have to pay attention to that clause, which states that it's only abolished for citizens. Once you're convicted of a crime, you become a slave. It tells you that very clearly, right?
Right.
Except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So, in line with what you're saying, it would seem to me, brother, that I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. If I'm freeing these blacks, right, or African Americans rather, because like I said, blacks and African Americans, black is a general banner. So I'm freeing these African Americans, but they don't really have any trades for the most part. They're not really skilled for the most part. Um, they're not really, for the most part, uh, what we would consider educated. So since I've made slavery legal for criminals, I would kind of think, playing the devil's advocate, I would create what we know as Jim Crow laws. I would do it if I was in power and money was the issue, right? Remember,
Right.
I'm playing the devil's advocate. I don't want people to get in their feelings. I'm speaking from a money perspective, right? Because ideals can't fill my belly. You know what I mean? I need money to eat. So, like I say regularly, money talks and bullshit walks. So playing the devil's advocate, I would like to think, you know what, maybe I'm going to create some crimes that these guys, meaning the freed African Americans, would usually fall victim to. For example, I could create something as dumb as, let's say, African Americans in the South like eating chitlins, right? Okay, I know most Caucasians don't, so you know what? Eating chitlins is illegal now. It may seem crazy, but I would do something like that. I'm playing the devil's advocate. Why? Because I know most of them are going to eat chitlins, and that's a good way for me to put a criminal charge on them. Hell yeah, and then get him locked up. So now, when he's locked up, now he's a slave. I got you again, my friend. Now you're going to be over here doing the slave labor, you know, plowing fields and all of that in these southern jails, as well as probably jails across the country for slave wages. So I fixed the problem. And then we also know that most crimes are economic based. I think we could agree upon that, right?
Yeah.
Most crimes are just not done for the most part. You know, most people who are criminals don't do it just to do it. Usually it's based on economic factors. A person's trying to get money, right? And they're looking at it like, I can't make enough money doing something legitimate without the qualifications. So therefore, I'm going to do something illegal, right? So it would stand to reason that a whole lot of freed African Americans are going to be doing crimes. So why wouldn't they be doing crimes? Because they're not, at that time, they're not really qualified for professional positions, you know, positions that require you being able to know how to read and write, unless it was hard labor. You get what I'm saying? So we could see that, right? I'm pretty sure the audience gets the idea, right? So, so with that being kept in mind, how do you think that ties into Abraham Lincoln? And you could put the image back up too, bro, with the coins, right? So individuals have the visual, you know what I mean? People are visual. Everybody's not intellectual, you know what I mean? They need to be able to see things so they could have the visual there. So let's what do you think, brother? Like, because remember that we're presenting this subject as symbology. Put it like that. We're not saying we're correct. We're speculating for sure. That's what we should be doing because we don't have all the answers. How do you think that all of what you said, brother, ties into why Abraham Lincoln is looking the other way on a penny? Do you think that's coincidence? And how do you think the South saw his actions, meaning the Confederate government? Because we already stated that a major reason for him getting hit or the hit being put on him was because of the whole Emancipation Proclamation thing, as well as the 13th Amendment.
Right. In regards to why he's facing the opposite direction, again, there's a lot of speculation about it. I've seen some brothers basically break down that it's just simply the way the portrait was. So when Theodore Roosevelt seen the portrait, basically he was like, okay, that's the one that I want to use, put that on a penny. And that was just that. The assumption is that there was no motive behind the reason why he's facing right. They did not state why they used a copper penny. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of the times when you hear copper, copper usually relates to indigenous Americans or Native Americans, if you will. That's what they'll say. Copper color, skin tone, red metal. That's what they'll call them.
Right.
And so they didn't state why they used the copper penny for this. But what I did come to realize, though, and most people don't know this, is that the quarter is copper. If you take your quarter out your pocket and you look at the side of it, it's brown. Right. I didn't know that for the longest time. So, but most people don't know that, right? So they don't state why they use the copper penny, right? They just state, oh, you know, the portrait was faced to the right, so that's the way that he used it. He wanted to depict what the portrait depicted. I guess it was him at Congress, maybe, So that's that aspect. Now, there's other speculation that the reason why he's on his penny facing this way is because of the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, is because he freed the slaves, where you had George Washington who came before him, and you had Thomas Jefferson who came before him, where they failed to do what he did as far as passing a law or an amendment to free the slaves. So it's kind of like, if you think about it.
Let me throw this in there real quick. At least as far as those presidents you see that are on the coins, I can assure you, like, for example, George Washington was a major slave breeder, bro. Like, he was about his business when it came to slave breeding, to the point that you see how people breed dogs. You know, people that breed dogs, that are dog breeders. You never seen people in the neighborhood that breed dogs, bro, to sell them?
I've never seen it before, nah.
Or you never heard of it? Like, you know, Michael Vick.
I've heard of
back
it,
in the
yeah.
days?
Nah,
All right.
I definitely heard of it. Yeah. I've never seen it before, though.
All right, so you have people who invest in breeding dogs. You know what I mean? But you have to breed them correctly to get the most amount of money from them, so on and so forth. That's a business. So that's how George Washington was in terms of slave breeding. He had a vast plantation, bro. It was all business with him. So he was a slave breeder. He was a Freemason, like we said. But again, when we deal with Freemasonry, we can't put morals into it. Social club masonry, you can do that. But esoteric occult masonry, it doesn't work that way. Because again, there's nothing objective about morals. There's nothing, you can't pick apart a tree and find morality in a tree. It just doesn't exist in nature. It's a man-made construct. So George Washington, you know, he was a major slave breeder. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner for sure. He was on that type of time. FDR obviously wasn't, because he lived after the Emancipation Proclamation, where slavery was illegal. Was his Masonic jurisdiction anti-black? Absolutely. That's historically a fact, right? And I'll upload some episodes on that too. So yeah, follow along with that, bro, as far as where you were going with that. You know, because what I'm saying is that all of these other presidents that you see there, the Jefferson on the nickel, FDR on the dime, Washington on the quarter, all of those guys were anti-black. I'm keeping it 100 with you. And they're all looking in one direction, the same direction.
As in regards to like history and what we know, it's a lot of stuff is speculation. Again, I always remind people, you know, I wasn't there, so I can't prove it verbatim. All we have is what's left. You know what I'm saying? And you just got to use your common sense and connect the dots as much as you can with whatever you have left. So the information that's presented, or what we know about these particular presidents versus Abraham Lincoln, it would seem, or it appears as though Abraham Lincoln was in favor of Black people, African Americans, as opposed to the other four presidents. Obviously, JFK is not listed up here, but you get the point, right? They're facing the opposite direction, so it's kind of just like they got their backs turned on him in a sense, like, oh, you know. But the thing that we all have to pay attention to is, you know, George Washington was the first president, so there's no real way he could turn his back on him. You know what I'm saying? And then Thomas Jefferson too. But the symbolism of it, like whoever created these coins and whoever said, yes, we're going to turn the coins to the left, that could be, you know, symbolically saying, you know, yeah, these presidents turned their back on him, because what he passed as far as the 13th Amendment, they probably would have never passed in that particular manner. But if you go on to read, like I was reading this thing on history.com, and it was saying that even George Washington didn't know what to do about slavery. And now he's a guy who has been documented to participate in it. And even he didn't know what to do about slavery. So the sense that I get from Abraham Lincoln, from George Washington, is that these dudes weren't doing things based off of emotion or morals.
Right.
It was like you just Right,
Yeah, it
like
was
you just
it was
mentioned.
it was economic. Like a brother told me, right? Because we're free thinkers. We're not in our emotions. If you read the books of J.A. Rogers, you know, he'll give you statistics showing you that there were plenty of African American slave owners, you know, who were free blacks, and they did own slaves because it's money at the end of the day. So I'm not convinced that so many people in this country, let alone the world, are actually moral, because it doesn't show me that. It shows me that they want to be more, they profess being moral when they're poor. That's what my experience has shown me. My experience and study of history has shown me that when people actually make it financially, they participate in those things that would be considered immoral. Like I said, and during slavery times, there were plenty of black slave owners. That's a historical fact. They didn't say, oh, he's black too, man, I'm not going to have him as a slave. The way they looked at it was, why wouldn't I want to have somebody cooking my food for me, shining my shoes for me? Yo, go get me that cup that's on my table. Bring it over here.
Right.
Black people would do that just as quick as white people would if they had the opportunity to do it, right? So the economic agenda, which is pretty much what we're on now, because you had hit upon a vital point also, in line with this whole coin symbology that we're dealing with. You stated that Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist. So again,
Nope.
in what way, right? Because for me, I may be wrong, but I'm convinced that there's there's certainly some type of a symbolic message in the way these coins are minted. To me, I could say that because I do know on the back of the $1 bill, as well as the front of it, there's plenty of Masonic symbology there. No doubt about that. I've studied it for myself. And I'm not the type to just say, "Oh, history said this, and there's my proof." Nah, I'm scientific, bro. I deal with mathematics. I deal with what is clear, right? So I'm convinced that there's some occult, esoteric symbology in Abraham Lincoln looking the other way, right? On the penny, I'm convinced of that. Um, but as you said, if he's turning his back on the rest of them, philosophically, right? If he's turning his back and he wasn't an abolitionist, it couldn't have been that he was looking the other way in terms of thinking that blacks should be slaves, because obviously he presented a clause in the 13th Amendment which made it so that, or Congress did or whatever, which made it so that, yeah, they still can be slaves, but only if they get locked up. So I try to look at it like, what did he do that really was, how did he really go against the grain? Because
Right.
I'm still convinced that he went against the grain, because the Confederate Army or the Confederate government put a hit on him. That's for sure. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, John Wilkes Booth, he got away with that. Even though popular history tells you he didn't, he did. I've seen the evidence. Check out Brad Meltzer. He has a whole documentary on it with documents. So they wanted him dead. You know what I mean? So I look at it like, why? What did he do that warranted a hit being placed on him? You know what I mean? He did do something that went against the grain. So he did turn his back in some way. On the surface, that would seem to be the abolition of slavery. But as you said, Brother Righteous, and I agree with what you said, follow the yellow brick road. There's always money
Money.
behind it. Follow the money trail. Follow those gold bricks. And then you're going to start finding out what's really going on. So I personally haven't studied too much of the money trail aspect of the Emancipation Proclamation, but if I had to take a wild guess, I would, if I was a betting man, I would say that he did something that was out of pocket economically. He did something that went against the grain, and that's what they mean by him turning his back. I don't know if you could give us some insight on that, Brother Righteous, as far as
So
what he did.
So remember when I spoke about when I mentioned Abraham Lincoln brought up the around his time he had this currency that was out that was called the greenback, basically. And you'll hear some
Mm,
rappers talk about green. We call money greenbacks today, but we referring to the Federal Reserve note. But there's an actual greenback. It looks completely different. I'm gonna see if I could pull a picture up. Excuse me, so I can show everybody. But basically, if you watch history, if you look at history, let's start with just George Washington and the central banks. Right now, our central bank is the Federal Reserve, but it's not a
hmm.
part of the American government. It's not a part of the United States.
Right.
The money is supposed to come from the United States Treasury. Now, there's speculation that Abraham Lincoln was fighting central banks, so he created a currency called the greenback,
Right.
and this
And
was
point and put this out there too, because don't, brother righteous, when we talk to the audience, never take it for granted that most of our audience is well educated, and I'm not offending them. I just know from dealing with a lot of the subscribers and corresponding with them, a lot of them are not like avid readers. You know what I mean? Or a lot of them are not well read. So some of this stuff is new to them. So when you mention a point like that, like the Federal Reserve Bank, for those that don't know, it was created in 1913. That's when
right,
the success was made in terms of actually establishing a centralized bank, which is the Federal Reserve. That did not happen until 1913, which is
correct,
sometime after Lincoln's time. So prior to that, as the brother stated, and continue, brother, there were always efforts being made by international bankers to
right.
create a centralized bank. So go ahead, bro.
That's absolutely correct too. So Thomas Jefferson was fighting against central banks. So there's been many attempts, even when George Washington was there.
Hmm.
George Washington was opposed to political parties. It's so much stuff out there. You just got to do your
What?
research. But what
Why? Why were they opposed? What was the reason? Why were these certain presidents opposed to the establishment of a centralized bank?
him in particular, George Washington felt like that it would hurt the economy, and it would create what we have today, basically. Um, a double-sided system that is portraying itself as two when it's really operating as one. As I stated earlier with you, you got the
Hmm.
Republicans that saying it's the left, it's the radical left,
Hmm.
but you were part of it too. And
Hmm.
y'all playing this back and forth, this polarization game, like, oh no, it's them. No, and then they blaming it on you, no, it's them. That was the issue that George Washington he didn't want to take place. He felt like the political parties was if I'm quoting him correctly, it was a means for a disaster, basically. That and Federal Reserve banks or central banks, excuse me.
Yeah,
So
let's stay pointed on that. Like I say that because to my understanding, as far as why, I don't know why each president who was opposed to it was opposed to it. Um, but I do know that the general reason for the opposition towards the establishment of a centralized bank was, and to give strength to this point, there's a famous quote attributed to brother Nathan Mayer Rothschild, who was a Freemason historically, right? And he's part of the Rothschild banking dynasty. But there's a famous saying attributed to him where it's claimed that he said, "Give me the control of a nation's money, and I don't care who makes its laws," which is to suggest that I control the money. My family controls the money, so we don't care who the politician is. I control the money, and therefore I'm above the law. That's what people interpret that as being. So, in line with that, what I do know is that most individuals, presidents in particular, who I can't speak for all of them, but from my research on the subject, most of them who were opposed to the establishment of a centralized bank, their reason for it was because they knew and understood, having an understanding of money and economics, that
yeah,
if we have a centralized bank, in essence, what is going to happen is that the international bankers, because remember, when you're dealing with currency, you're going to have to take that to an international level. You have to, right? You want your money to be good everywhere. So what is going to certainly happen is the international bankers are going to become the unseen hand. The real government, the real puppet masters, the real individuals who are above the law, who could do whatever the hell they want because they control the money. So to
Yep.
my understanding, that was the major issue that various presidents had with the establishment of a centralized bank. And I do know that oftentimes, like there have been several presidents who have been assassinated, right? And the unseen hand always has, they anytime they've assassinated a president, just like with Lincoln, the message was to say, listen, we could whack a president. We're not playing games. We
I
could
didn't even
whack a
think about that.
president. Yeah, we could whack a president because Lincoln got whacked, right? And like I said, watch that episode of Brad Meltzer's channel. It's on YouTube, and he talks about the Lincoln assassination and how John Wilkes Booth really got away with it, and he proves it. It was a well orchestrated hit, in other words. So they're sending out the message that, listen, we could whack a president, man. Are you kidding me? You guys think you're really protected by this government? We're the unseen government. If we say a president got to go, he's going to go. So Lincoln got whacked. There's another lesser known. He's not a lesser known president, but his assassination is not as famous. He got whacked for economic reasons, that's for sure, because this particular president was trying to go against the bankers, and they had him whacked. We all know JFK got whacked, and we know that JFK got whacked because he did something economically that he wasn't supposed to do. He reneged, right? And we know that the mafia was involved in that. But remember, the mafia at that time, it was the golden age of the mafia. They were tied into the international banking system. You know, it's organized crime on an international level. And JFK was supposed to get Fidel Castro out of Cuba, take over Cuba so that the mafia could come back into Cuba and establish their casinos again. And JFK's election was rigged. That's a fact. The mafia got him in office, right? They did everything they had to do to rig the election. But when JFK's father, for people that don't know, is Joe Kennedy. And Joe Kennedy was a major liquor business owner. And when Prohibition came, he took the opportunity to bootleg because liquor became illegal, right, during Prohibition. And John F. Kennedy's father was a major player in that. So he made a lot of money with the mafia. So what he did was he called in a favor. And he's like, listen, my son, he wants to, become president, see what y'all could do. And one hand washes the other. When he gets in there, we could help to get the mafia back into Cuba because Fidel Castro is a dictator. Fidel Castro played no games during his regime. When he wanted to get drugs out of Cuba, he let everybody know, if you want to leave, leave. But if you do not leave and I catch you or my regime catches you selling drugs, it's the death penalty. You're going to you're gonna get, we're gunning you down. There's no slap on the wrist, we're killing you. So everybody was fleeing Cuba at that time. So Fidel Castro shut down the mafia's operations out there, but the mafia escaped. So when JFK got back in, that was the deal. He was supposed to get Castro out of office, out of power, so that he could put the mafia back in there so the casinos could open back up and they could make their money again. He tried to do it, but he failed. It looked terrible. You know what I mean? Castro spanked us basically, and to find a scapegoat for his fumble, JFK and his brother started going after the mafia. So the mafia got him whacked. You get what I'm saying? Bottom line. And like I said, when the unseen hand is sending a message, that's what they're doing. So they did it with JFK. Like, let me show you something. You really think you and your brother are powerful because you're part of the federal government now? You forgot who made you. You forgot who got you in office. So now I'm going to send you a message. And what did? They whacked JFK in broad daylight. Whacked him. What happened to JFK's little brother, Robert Kennedy? After he lost his political office, they whacked him too, you heard? JFK Jr., John F. Kennedy's son, what did they do to him? They whacked him too, you heard? So, um, so with Lincoln, you're saying, go back to the greenbacks. You mentioned that
Yeah,
Abraham Lincoln wanted to put out a form of money called greenbacks or something to this effect.
right. So those came out in like 1861 to 1863 is the time frame that those came out. And we got to remember still, like there was never a cease to the push for a central bank by these people who wanted to regulate stuff. And I think you already mentioned it, but there's a quote that I heard from one of these banking pioneers where he was like, give me control of the money, I care not who runs this government.
Yeah, that's
Something along
brother.
those.
I said that already. That's brother Nathan Mayer Rothschild,
Yeah, okay, so
who was
that's
a
the one.
Freemason. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that it was more economical than it was, and so the whole 13th Amendment has something to do with the economic structure of this country as we know it, because again, you're changing the way that we handle production.
So let me ask you this:
Because
what would be the problem? Just to give the audience and the viewers some context behind what you're saying. What would be the threat of this greenback? Like, what's so threatening about it?
so the money wasn't completely backed by gold, but it was more secure than what we have today as a Federal Reserve note.
Okay.
So the understanding of central banks or the Federal Reserve as we have it today is that their whole objective is control the money supply of a country, a powerful country, and then in turn back it by no physical commodity. So if the money is not backed by physical commodities, it's pretty much paper, sit, and the value is
Not
created by the individual that believes in it.
right, but we also, when we deal with economics, I have to say this because when I started getting money, I used to read a lot of theories, but once I started becoming a hustler, I understood money way better because I'm dealing with it. I started to realize that, listen, current money is just a symbol for currency, energy. Once I
Right.
peeped that, I realized how, you know what, I could do a favor for a person. I got more money than I think I have. Why? Because I'm an able-bodied man. I could give a person advice and have them give me something in exchange for it, right? So that fiat money is backed. What it is backed by is the potential labor of the people. You would never be able to pull off a scam on people just printing up money that has no backing. It would never work. Believe me when I tell you, it would never work. There has to be something that backs it. And in this case, with the fiat money, Federal Reserve note, it's potential energy that backs it. For example, how many Americans do we have in this country now? Of course, you know we have tens of millions of people here, right?
Let's say roughly 300 million.
All
Around
right,
there.
roughly 300 million. So you see the amount of potential labor that exists in approximately 300 million people, right?
Right. That's a fact. That's a fact.
So right. So if the labor of this people would back a form of currency, it's good money. You understand? Anybody's willing to do business with you. Why? Because you could back it up. All of these people, they can produce something. You don't need gold per se. You don't need any. You just need something to back it. And as you said, which is actually a factor, people need to believe in it, right?
Right.
So that's what makes the money work. It's not like, oh, we're just printing up notes and tricking you. No, it's not that. The people, the American citizens are the surety backing that money, just like with slave times, right? A brother told me, and this is an African American brother, but he's not in his emotions. He's a thinker, right? He's like, you could look at slavery as either genocide or you could look at it as the founding of the greatest nation in history. He's like, it's perspective. Which way do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at it as there's genocide upon the people, or do you want to look at it as slavery was the foundation of the greatest or one of the greatest nations to ever exist. So when you look at it economically, the founding fathers, I'm saying this so people can understand money better. The founding fathers, when they rebelled against England, and they like, damn, think about it. If you rebel, what's the first thing that's on your mind when it comes to survival? Your money flow, bro. Your weapons are important, your defense, but you gotta have money, bro. If you don't have money, you cannot go to war, bro. It's dumb thinking you could. You need
Right.
resources, in other words. So one of their biggest problems was, damn, bro, the British crown, bro, is very powerful. They have all the resources in the world. How are we gonna beat these people? We need to have resources. So in terms of revolution, slavery was in the best interest of the United States. I'm talking from a business perspective. We don't got to get in our feelings and none of that. Slavery was very smart in terms of economics. Why? Because the founding fathers realized we don't have all of this gold and all of that. You know what I mean? To go to war with Britain. We don't got the we don't got the natural resources, bro, to do that. Like, what is really produced in America? Think about it, bro. We had our little oil time. You know, we had our big oil era. You know what I mean? And that was a resource that you will find over here. But stuff like gold, bro, diamonds, a lot of commodities, a lot of that stuff just wasn't here. You know what I mean? Tobacco was, so they had to capitalize off of tobacco because tobacco was native to this country. It's not native to other lands. So, from an economic perspective, damn, we're in a revolution. You know what? We don't need gold. We got all these slaves, bro. You know how much free labor that is? So why the hell would I want to abolish slavery at that time as a businessman? Of course I wouldn't, bro, because that's signing my death certificate. These slaves is cheap and free labor, bro.
Yeah.
So this is going to give me enough money meaning currency, bro, power, financial power, economic power to become the strongest country on this land. So people have to look at that with America. Okay, this country is not that old. It came out in the 1700s as far as being an independent entity. An independent entity is the key thing there, the key idea. So in only that short amount of time, it rose to becoming the strongest nation on this planet. And by strongest, I'm talking about military force.
That's a fact.
So what led to that? The founding fathers knew that slavery was in their best interest economically, because if they abolished slavery from the beginning, they wouldn't have got as rich as they got, because we don't have those type of in other words, we don't have an abundance of resources in America. That's why, like in the Nation of Gods and Earth's teachings, they like, yo, the North America was the poor part of the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? They telling you like, bro, there were no big ass gold mines over here, bro. There's no big ass diamond mines over here. So slavery was the best thing in terms of building up the economic power of this country. Nothing personal, it's just business. So, so with that being the case, because you touched upon some good points, you mentioned the greenback. So basically what you're saying is when Abraham Lincoln tried to introduce a new type of money that basically international bankers couldn't control. That's what you're saying?
Right. And it was I think to try to answer your question, I'm not saying that this exactly answers it, because I know you're saying like what you're stuck on this the symbolism of why he's faced in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about presidents being whacked,
Right.
and what is the reason? Because some people speculate the reason why he was killed is because of the 13th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation. Some speculate is because of the money, the economic perspective. So I'm thinking about which one weighs more on
Yeah.
the economics on the
Yeah.
economic scale.
To me, and I think we both agree. If I had to if I had to pick and choose, I would lean towards the economic aspect, 100%. As only in light of the things you said, brother. I did some research a little bit in the past as well as before we started shooting this live stream, and there's no evidence to show that Abraham Lincoln was like an abolitionist, like you said, or that he even cared per se, about
Right.
the rights of African Americans who are in slavery. So everything points in the direction that it was economically based, right? So, and also with the coins, right? Because remember, the Federal Reserve is who prints these coins. Am I correct?
Yeah, for the most part, they do.
I'm
Which
saying
coins you talk?
yeah. I'm saying our
Yeah,
currency. I'm just in a general sense, in a general
yeah,
way. I know that we have different minting places.
yeah,
Um,
but yeah, that's
so
right.
so when I look at that, that leads me more towards believing that these international bankers are going to leave you some type of symbolic hint, bro. Because
That's a
are
good
they
point. That's a good point.
are they just designing these forms of currency? Like bro, even if you study money, right? The way money is printed, you'll see a remnants of heraldry on there. You know what I mean? Heraldry. Excuse me, heraldry. Coats of arms, stuff like that. If you study artwork and things like that,
Right.
symbology, dating back to the old days. So, and especially when I study the $1 bill, bro, I clearly could see, wow, that pyramid. If I superimpose an inverted triangle over the triangle on that pyramid in the back of the dollar bill, I clearly see that it points at Mason, Mason. Clearly, bro. What are
Yeah,
the
that's
odds
not a
of that
that's
happening? So
right. It's not a
I don't care.
coincidence.
I don't care if I read some book with somebody saying, "No, that's false." No, bruh. It's very clear. Then it's a pyramid itself. Why would a pyramid be there? And Brother Righteous was telling me the other day, how he'll go on his sightseeing missions and stuff like that and look at public landmarks and start seeing, pagan symbology. Like we were talking about the nation's capital the other day, in particular, the Capitol building. And if you study ancient history, the Capitol, Capitol, that was an ancient temple in
Oh,
Rome that was used to conduct public business, and it was dedicated to the Roman gods. So when you start learning about the ancient mysteries and ancient Roman religion, ancient Egyptian religion, ancient Greek religion, even ancient Mayan religion, things like this, you start to notice that the individuals who are behind the designs of our country's landmarks, government buildings, they put pagan, and I'm not saying pagan in a derogatory way because I'm saying it because I consider myself a pagan. They put pagan symbology right in front of your face.
right there.
But if you don't study the ancient world, it's hidden in plain sight and you're not gonna see it. Um, so I say that to say I'm quite sure, if I had to bank on it, that the Federal
It was epic.
Reserve Bank, as far as their designers, the people who do the designs, I'm quite sure that these individuals are adept at heraldry and ancient art, and that they're educated people, and that they would place indirect signs on this money. Even with George Washington being on the $1 bill, you could read so much into that. The number one, which would be
Right.
Alpha, the first. George Washington is deified in this country. He's looked upon as a god, and not just a god, but as a Freemason god.
And then
So,
you got and
mhm,
and then you have Abraham Lincoln as being the first president minted on a particular coin.
that's
Um,
definitely
of, on all of the coins, which
right.
if I'm thinking about it in the same line as which you speaking of, if we're alluding to that this was something dealing with economics,
Mm-hmm.
then to me, the assumption that I would, or the conclusion that I would come to somewhat would be, he was the closest or the first president to come
Mm-hmm.
close to being successful. Because if you think about it, there's no mention of any other president even issuing another type of national currency, except underneath the presidency of Abraham Lincoln with this greenback. And
All right, listen. Let's check this out, right? Because I want to read just a couple of the comments or whatever. Um, and I think that at least for us, I think the matter is concluded as far as why he's looking in the other direction is because it
right,
was economic. I think we could conclude the matter on that, but we're still going to have to go into why is it brown? Is there some type of subliminal suggestion there? Because I
right,
damn well know that the Confederacy saw it like that. Like he's an N-word, basically. You know, like
right,
you ever see
right,
how
right.
you ever see how racist white folk in this day and age, racist white folk, they with that. Like they'll look at a person like Eminem and be like, he's a wigger, you know, for educational purposes. Like this guy thinks he's black. You know what I mean? Or just using this terminology, you think you're black, and they're gonna label you as black, and they're gonna treat you as such. Rest assured of that they're gonna treat you just. I'm saying a racist white folk. If they stamp you that an N lover, quote unquote, is what they would say, a wigger or an N lover, they're gonna be like, now you chose to be with them. Like the movie Roots depicts that too, because you had a white character that was like that, and they started treating him just like that. Like, nope, you to us, you're black from now on, my friend. So his family disowned him. You know what I mean? Because he married a black woman in the movie, and his father's like, word. He's like, you're supposed to just sleep with these women, bro. They're bed wenches. You're supposed to do that. I'll pay for you to have a bed wench, bro. Like you do that in your little mini mansion, bro. I don't care how many black women you sleep with, but you just crossed the line by marrying one. So I must tell you that from this day forward, son, and I'm not gonna let my friends kill you because they want to hang you right now. I'm gonna let you live. But from this day forward, your trust is canceled. You're not inheriting any money from me. From this day forward, you're an N word. You heard? That's how the movie Roots depicts it. And the white character, he took that fate. You get what I'm saying? He accepted his fate. Like, damn, I'm still gonna marry my black girlfriend, and she became his wife and everything. And he lived the rest of his days in the black community, right? So, so let me just read a couple of comments, bro, and then this floor is yours, man, from here on out. Cold Stone 36 said the slaves at that time, at the days of Abraham Lincoln, he says the slaves at that time were property. You can't take another man's property without just compensation. That's constitutional.
So
Uh-huh.
he's talking about what we spoke on as far as Abraham Lincoln
Mm-hmm.
passing his 13, getting his 13th Amendment passed, basically,
Right.
because it's almost like y'all got to give up your slaves, but it's like, this is my property. We're
You're
not
robbing
giving
me,
up.
basically.
Exactly. So that's economics right there. Like, even though the slave owners can't really pay these slaves,
Mm-hmm.
that's still their means of business, basically, because
Yeah,
they
that's
doing
how
all the
this.
work for them.
Yeah, that's how the South took it, which is crazy, bro, because the federal government is in the business of robbing people legally. I'm not here to be politically correct. They're in that business. So if the federal government could find ways to rob you, they do it to convicted drug kingpins all the time. They find ways like, okay, we're seizing your assets. Or they put a law into effect tomorrow that virtually strips you of your assets. So I could see how the common man, you know what I mean, in the South, whether he was a black slave owner or a white slave owner or whatever, I could see how that would piss somebody off. That would be like the government coming in tomorrow and telling you all of you, everything you have in cryptocurrency is ours. It's illegal now, and they just take all your crypto. That would spark a revolution because it's robbery. You know what I'm? It actually is robbery. You're taking a person's property, like you said, which is crazy. But I could see it from various different angles. But from the business angle, I could see that. Markel Maxwell said, I heard about the greenbacks. Brother Derek Bennett is on. Peace and greetings to the East, brother. He says, "Bet one time there was nothing but labor, no currency, just labor for a place to stay, eat, and live basically." And that's true, brother Derek Bennett. Brother Righteous did a couple of episodes on his other podcast, Solar Masters Ascending, where he talks about that bartering and how the whole money situation came into effect. And with the practicality of it. So he brings you through the various stages of that. All right. He also said, meaning brother Derek Bennett, before money existed, people used other systems to perform exchanges. Bartering involves a direct trade for goods and services, although some aspects of this transaction are similar to the exchange, for sure. Okay, brother Righteous. So go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So to make another point as to why the Abraham Lincoln's coin is brown, um, we're going to bring up the aspect about him being black, right? So the question is, was he black? And it's still speculation. Like, not too many people can prove it as an actual fact.
Real
And
quick, bro. To any of the viewers, if you do sign on or whatever, even if you see the episode later, let us know in the comments what you think about that. Do you think Abraham Lincoln was black? So it's on the screen right now. Do you think Abraham Lincoln was? Do you think Abraham Lincoln was black? And if so, why, etc. What type of documentation could you uh, uh, provide to support your position, and so on and so forth. So go ahead, brother Righteous.
yeah, so again, the first time that I heard this particular claim, and this is what I'm speaking about is going to it's a way for me to try to prove as to why the penny is copper or and why Abraham Lincoln is on it, right? So this is an assumption as to, or this is an alluding to that. Oh, he was a brother because it's copper or whatever, and that's the reason why he's facing the opposite direction. That's not proven as actual fact. So don't take what I'm saying verbatim, but let's just open our minds and expand to the possibility, because we already explained that the reason why he's facing the opposite direction possibly could be because of economical reasons, and we gave a
Mm-hmm.
couple of reasons as to why,
Right.
or what economical things had taken place as to why they whacked him, or as to why he's facing the opposite direction. Now, a
Right.
third point, or the second point would be, is because he's actually a brother or black. So now the first time that this information kind of like hit the surface is with Hidden Colors, as I mentioned earlier, with Tariq Nasheed, the director of Hidden Colors, where he goes on to explain how when Abraham Lincoln was running for president, they were they had forms of propaganda up about him, and they was calling him Africanus. And I had that picture up. I'm gonna put it back up now so everybody can see it. Where is it at? This picture right here, where they got him labeled as Africanus. If you watch the Hidden Colors documentary, they call him a Melungian, basically, which is another way to say mulatto. He was mixed with black and white, basically, for lack of better terms. This picture right here is what they say that Abraham Lincoln really looked like. I'm gonna zoom it in for you.
Wow.
So
Hmm.
when I seen this picture, I was kind of my whole perspective was like, I kind of get it. I could kind of see where they going with that, because if you look at him, like, he doesn't look like Abraham Lincoln, but he looks like Abraham Lincoln, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying that this is Abraham Lincoln, but if you using your eyes and your visuals, the face structure, the bone structure, the African American hair and all of this, you could kind of get an idea for it. This is what they saying that he looked like. This picture right here.
Let me throw this in. Let me throw this in there, brother Righteous, real quick. Pardon me. And maybe you could piggyback off of this. I just want to throw this in here because I was researching it yesterday. All right. I went on Wikipedia, right? And I looked it up. It was Abraham Lincoln Black. So they have a bunch of different like references, book references that they use different quotes, and of course they have the references. Like, check out this book. This book was published at so and so time, and so on and so forth. So, what Wikipedia says about the matter is that um, Abraham Lincoln is believed to have like a certain amount of black in him, right? And they also give you other presidents too. Like, I want to say Thomas Jefferson is one of them. There's like 5 or 6 presidents that they point out on Wikipedia that are believed to have had black blood, right? Or that word mulatto. So Abraham Lincoln is one of them. I want to say Thomas Jefferson. I also want to say Washington, but I may be incorrect on that. So what in the references they reference, like there's a popular book that they reference that deals with like sayings, letters, and stuff like that of Abraham Lincoln. So if anybody wants to look into it, just go on Wikipedia and they give you the sources, right? So Wikipedia cites different quotes attributed to Lincoln, and they say like Lincoln never publicly said he was black, but in his private conversations he would say, my skin is black, I'm black, and stuff like that. And then you also have to realize that when you're dealing with Caucasians, and we don't believe in race on this channel. That's another thing. I'm pretty sure the viewers know that. Scientifically, we don't believe in race. We're just using black and white because that's what the profane masses use. They believe in race. So we're just using that, yeah, for lack of better terms, right? So one thing about certain Caucasians who are considered dark, like Sicilians, if you're cool, not all Sicilians, but if you've known certain Sicilians, a lot of Sicilians, they wouldn't be what you would consider black, but for being quote unquote Caucasian, they're a little darker than usual. A lot of them, their hair is more coarse. You know what I mean? A lot of times. So being amongst Caucasians, if you were a Caucasian too, you would look at a lot of Sicilians and be like, he's black. You know what I mean? You're not saying that he's African American, but what you're saying is like, bruh, he's darker than the usual Caucasian, and you got some black blood somewhere close in your lineage, because your hair is coarse, you know what I'm saying? It ain't straight. And your skin is a little bit tannish, my friend. You know what I mean? Like you just stepped up out of the tanning salon. And not that artificial tanning like the big brother Trump uses. Shout out to former President Donald Trump. I'm not dissing them. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? People that got artificial tan, you know, artificial tans. So Wikipedia is saying that his close friend too, who was a lawyer, like one of his best friends, Abraham Lincoln, they quote him and they give you the references. And I'm not saying the references are, remember that when you go into a reference, you just can't stand on that. You have to go to that book, and then you have to question, where did this book get this information from? And you have to be able to trace it back to something solid, right? So Wikipedia quotes one of Abraham Lincoln's best friends, who was a lawyer, saying, you know, yeah, we considered him, you know, a little darker than, not saying he didn't look like the traditional picture, but they like, we always considered him like, you got some black blood in you somewhere, my friend. You know what I mean? But you can still pass off as Caucasian. Like basically you're more Caucasian than you are black, but you got some black blood in you. You know what I mean? And I like to use the rapper Logic as an example, because Logic, who's very intelligent, bro, that kid is a genius. Well, that young man is a genius. He's mulatto, but if you saw him, you would be like, he's white. You get what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
But once you hang around him enough, you start to see the little features like, hold on, man. You know, I think your mother was dipping in the Hershey jar, my friend. You get what I'm saying? Your mannerisms and stuff like that. So that's what I was able to find on Lincoln, that he is believed to have been part black, and that behind closed doors he would be like, you know, you ever seen how you got certain Puerto Ricans like, you know, Puerto Ricans, we have all types of shades. But you ever seen how certain Puerto Ricans that'll be like brown skin, and like like they still chill with Puerto Ricans, but they'll be like, I'm the black one out of the bunch. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they're not, these particular ones would look more of what we would call Indian, you know what I'm saying, an African American or something like that. But they would still just reference themselves in that way, like it's me, the black kid. And it's like, they're really, you look Indian, but you're Puerto Rican, but they're saying it facetiously. You get what I mean? They're
Right.
saying it facetiously. So Wikipedia depicts Abraham Lincoln as having done that in his private life facetiously. Like, yeah, I'm black, man. You know what I mean? I'm a little darker and whatnot. But publicly, they claim that he never ever identified as being black. So go ahead, my brother. I apologize for saying
That goes to
so much.
it goes back to where one of the viewers had referenced is that, or what he mentioned is that that would have been that right there. Abe was mixed possibly. I think because in those times to fight for blacks, if he was all white, would be outlandish. Um, but the interesting part of the
That's
reason
brother
why this
Derek
is
Bennett.
the reason why this is is a controversial and it's an interesting topic is because when you read the story about him, right? Like let's just assume that this is really Abraham Lincoln, right? Let's assume that. I'm not saying this is him, but let's assume that. He passes the 13th Amendment. This is
Yeah.
this is the guy who passes the 13th Amendment. This is the guy who is not in favor, who doesn't support he's not an abolitionist and he doesn't support racial equality. That's why it's kind of like controversial. It's kind of because, and not saying that it can't happen because you have black slave owners. You know what I'm saying? So even though
Yeah.
that's a far stretch for people to believe.
Look, check it. Like brother Derek Bennett just said. He said, just going off the era, they would not let that happen. Not trying to ruffle feathers, but he was a Barack Obama. History repeats itself. So I get what he's saying because my personal belief, and I may be wrong, my friends, don't hold it against me. I just speak what I feel to be correct. You know, if I'm incorrect, correct me. But I'm definitely teachable. But in line with that, my view has always been I don't think that this country right now, this country, as I stated, statistically, just go on uscensus.gov, you know, the government's website dealing with, you know, the Census Bureau. 75% of this country, more or less, is what we consider Caucasian. That's a vast majority, bro. That's 3/4 of the whole country. So, in my lifetime, I've seen brown skin brown skin candidates run for president. I've seen dark skin candidates run for president. In each case, they didn't stand a chance. You get what I'm saying? They definitely didn't stand a chance. So Obama is, you know, former President Obama is a mulatto, is what we would call him, right? You know, his mom's is quote unquote Caucasian and his dad is quote unquote black. So he's a mulatto. So I could see him getting in, you know what I mean? But I still don't think as a nation we're at that point in which individuals will actually go heavy to want to get a person who was non-mulatto to be president. I say that because I've seen too many fail in trying, right? Obama's like the next best thing, you would say. By that, I mean he's a mulatto, like Brother Derek is saying. And that history repeats itself. So now, let's just say that the country was to revert into a good old boys club type of thing, you know? Heavily Caucasian on the source, you know, stuff like that. I could see them whitewashing Barack Obama, you know, and then because he's already a mulatto, so I could see them whitewashing them, and you'll look at a picture later on, and Barack Obama now looks like Brad Pitt or something like that. You know what I mean? They have pictures of him, and he looks like Brad Pitt. And you have to really dig in the archives and stuff and be like, oh, okay. And remember that the era we're speaking of, the photography was in its infancy. You know what I mean? It wasn't, everybody wasn't running around taking pictures and stuff like that. So it's easier to whitewash a person in history. So that's basically what the brother's saying, brother Derek Bennett. So go ahead, brother Righteous.
Yeah, so I mean this essentially that wraps it up for me. So you have he said not Brad Pitt. Nah, that wraps it up for me as another um possible reason as to why Abraham Lincoln is on a copper penny. Um, are they referencing
Mm-hmm.
or showing? Are they indirectly trying to show you like, look, we pulled a curtain over your eyes or the sheet over your faces, like you didn't even know you had a black president, possibly, right? We
Right.
understand that this government has they have the government is interesting. Let me say that. And there's things that they can do that a lot of people don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of things that they they could pump fake, as Brother Majesty would say, or they know how to pump fake basically and get you to believe
Right.
whatever they want you to believe. So I definitely think that there's some symbolism as far as the coins. Um, it's possible that Abraham Lincoln really was a brother, and this is
Mm-hmm.
possibly him. This picture was said to have come out of the Library of Congress. Now, I have not confirmed that, and I don't know anybody to have confirmed that this has come from the Library of Congress. But there's another picture of it with the same picture on it. On the subtitles, it says that he was the 24th president, and that is hidden inside of the Library of Congress. Again, I'm a person
Mm-hmm.
who does I do my due diligence. All right, so until I can confirm that I see this picture in the Library of Congress and is listed with Abraham Lincoln on there as a verifiable source,
Right.
I would definitely paper trail it, send
Right.
it out, and let people see that. But until then, we can't confirm if this is Brother Abraham Lincoln. We can't really confirm if this is the reason why he's on a copper penny and he's facing the opposite direction because he's in opposition as far as racial wise to the other presidents. This is all
Uh-huh.
speculation. I'm
All
leaning
right.
more
And
towards like Brother Majesty. I'm
look,
leaning more
and
towards the economic
uh-huh.
aspect.
All right. And I'm gonna give what I think about this. Why he's a on the um, a brown metal, right? Which we know is copper, right? And of course, like you said, brother, there's copper and all the different. When you're dealing with metals, you're dealing with alloys. You know what I mean? But the point is, his coin, the penny, is brown. The other coins are of white metal. You know what I mean? They're white alloys. So, um, all right. So before I get into my spill, put this secret Bible joint up there real quick, and then I'm gonna get into my spill as to why I think uh, um, Abraham Lincoln is the his coin is the only coin that's brown. You know what I mean? And the other coins are white, of white metal. So yeah. So for the different viewers and subscribers, with Secret Bible Volume 2, thanks to all of those who have purchased the book. So now we have it back in stock again, right? Because we sell out. So now we have them back in stock again. Thanks to all of those who bought it. As usual, it's still $60. Free shipping in the United States. If you're outside of the United States, the shipping is $10. So for anybody interested in purchasing the book, you do that by sending me an email, majestymontanez@gmail.com, and then we do it through our Cash App or PayPal. It takes about 2 weeks for you to get your book. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks to everybody who has bought it. A lot of the viewers and subscribers, at least in their personal communication with me, is like, bro, the book is fire. It's just dope. The content is dope because, you know, it deals with interpreting the Bible. It gives you keys on how to interpret the Bible, and also it interprets some of the Bible for you. So they were all of our customers have been highly satisfied with the book. Let me say that. So that's something that I'm proud of. And, you know, it didn't exceed my expectations, but I'm meaning that I expected it to help a lot of people. So I'm happy that it has helped them. So with that being the case, Brother Righteous, could you put back up the image with with Abraham Lincoln on the penny and the other presidents on the other coins?
I got you.
So thank you, brother. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, this subject matter that we're dealing with tonight, I first came across this, like I said, when I was about 14 or 15, and my friend's grandfather at the time, who was a senior citizen, Prince Mason, he's the one who told me about this, you know, but he went in his pocket and he got the coins out. You know how some old guys are, man. So he took the coins out of his pocket and he laid them across like that. And he's like, what do you get out of that? And I would have never noticed. I would never have noticed that, oh, snap. Lincoln is looking in the opposite direction of these other guys. And also the penny is brown and he's on it, right? So I'm in agreement with Brother Righteous that the reason Abraham Lincoln is looking to the right while the other presidents on the coins are looking to the left is because it's a subliminal message or a symbolic statement saying Abraham Lincoln turned his back. He went the opposite direction of what these other presidents went, right? And I'm in agreement with Brother Righteous in that what Abraham Lincoln did to go the wrong way, quote unquote, not saying he did go the wrong way, quote unquote, was that he went against the grain economically. I'm in agreement with Brother Righteous with that. He did some certain things to become a nuisance to the international bankers who were trying to create, you know, greenbacks, money that was interest free, money that they couldn't control, money that they couldn't put interest on and stuff like that, and they whacked them as a result. I believe that. And if y'all watch The Wizard of Oz, we'll probably do an episode on The Wizard of Oz. Actually, we should, because The Wizard of Oz is full of alchemical symbolism. It's The Wizard of Oz is based on the philosophy of alchemy, disguised as a children's show / musical, right? But just to reference that, if you ever watch The Wizard of Oz again with your children, or if you do it just to study esoteric symbology, they tell you in that movie, follow the yellow brick road, which means the gold bricks. That means follow the money trail. And if you follow the money trail, you'll find who's the wizard that's really controlling everything behind the scenes.
Real
The man
quick,
behind the curtain. Yes, sir.
I want to add to your point while you're speaking about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
When I just looked
Right.
up Abraham Lincoln with the greenback, one of these websites, it's a .org site. It says the new money was also initiated debates about the proper anchor for the U.S. monetary system that permeated national politics in the early 20th century. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, conceived by L. Frank Baum in the 1890s, can be read as an allegory regarding to those debates, with the yellow brick road representing the gold, Dorothy's slippers in the book representing silver, and the Emerald City representing the greenbacks. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, but we'll do that. We'll do an episode because we could crush that. Like there's certain people who comment on it and they're not initiated into alchemy, so they can't really interpret correctly. You know what I mean? Because Baum, the brother who you mentioned there, the author, he was a theosophist. He was an occultist. That's a fact. It's not speculation. He was actually a student of the ancient mysteries. He was heavily into it. So rest assured that when he created the Wizard of Oz, it was as an allegory. But you can't just approach the Wizard of Oz economically. Otherwise, you miss a lot of the lessons in there. You have to know something of alchemy and ancient mysteries. And by knowing alchemy, I don't mean you're on Facebook and going into these fake alchemist groups that are like, I'm an alchemist, I transmute light into love and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm saying that you've been initiated into alchemy. You've gone through the white, through the black phase, through the white phase, through the red phase, or you're going through those degrees of alchemy. Um, if you're not initiated into alchemy, you're not an alchemist. You can't call yourself an alchemist. You have to be brought into alchemy by a master of alchemy. It's a tradition. So we'll do a nice episode on that, brother. Trust that, because we'll be able to pinpoint the alchemical aspects as well as the economic aspects. With a PowerPoint presentation. So going back to Abraham Lincoln, so we agree as to why he's looking in the opposite direction. He went against the grain, you know. Why do I believe he's on the brown coin, which is the penny, and everybody else is on white metal? I take that to mean that these other men, these other presidents are considered Caucasian, and I take it that the powers that be, at least at that time, and even I would say they're different sectors of the elite. We live in a new age, you know what I mean? So they're different sectors. On the one hand, you have individuals who are elite under the old world order. By that I'm saying monarchies, like the royal family in England. They still fall under the old world order. They still have a hell of a lot of power, hell of a lot of money, stuff like that. Then you have new age elite, individuals who are millennials and stuff like that, and basically new money. You know what I mean? They've gotten their fortunes in recent times. But I think that when it comes to individuals who come from old money and the elite power structure, coming from the Caucasian side of the equation, I think that they do place a heavy importance on the concept of race. Like, for example, you'll see with the royal families, the ancient African royal families did the same thing as you see the modern European ones do. They participated in a lot of inbreeding. We talked about that in a prior episode. Like the ancient Egyptians used to inbreed. I'm talking about the royal families. Sister would literally marry brother, cousin would marry cousin. Under the Islamic Empire, the same thing exists. Like the Prophet Muhammad of Islam, he married his daughter Fatima to his cousin, which is Ali. So they inbred too. Inbreeding is considered lawful in Abrahamic religions, and in line with cousins inbreeding. So their religions allow that. But anyway, so when it comes to the Caucasian side of the equation of the elite, those coming from the old world order, of course, they're going to place importance on what the masses would consider a race issue. In other words, they will inbreed. They want to make sure that I'm going to marry my daughter to her cousin, or my son to his female cousin, or to his half sister, just for protection purposes. That's why they do that. For those who do it, I'm talking about those who follow that way of keeping power. The object is that you keep outsiders away from your dynasty. All you have around you is family, so that's a security measure. All you have around you is family. So even if you have internal conflict, it's safer for you to do that. It's just like, what do you feel safer doing? Living inside of your house with your relatives, with your blood relatives, or do you feel safer living in your house with associates, where you actually all live in the same apartment? Anybody's going to tell you, I would rather live with my family in the apartment. Why? Because it's safety for me. Even if we might fight, it's much safer than if I have strangers off the streets sharing an apartment with me. Right. Sharing the same bathroom that I do, you know what I mean? The same living room, etc. So that's the concept behind the elite interbreeding, the old world order style of elitism, right? So with that in mind, I think that Abraham Lincoln being on the brown coin is a way of saying that he's for educational purposes, he's an N. You understand? For educational purposes, the N word, in a way that he's not a classical, traditional racist. Not saying he wasn't racist, right? But meaning that, remember how I said in modern times, as well as the Civil War period that we're talking about in regards to Lincoln, you have racial families that would do that to this day. To this day, I've seen it in my own lifetime. I've definitely seen it. I've seen it done by blacks. I've seen it done by whites. I've I've seen it done by Latinos. I've seen it done by Asians. I've seen Latinos I personally know say, "Oh, word, you had a baby with this black guy. Have a good life with him. Never come back." Right? I've seen that happen. I've seen it with black families where the so-called black sister would become pregnant by the white guy. And the family is like, "Oh, word, have a nice time. You're white now. In our book, no longer are you black. You can never return here." Right? I've seen this. And if people think I'm freestyling, go on the internet and see how many racial fights happen on YouTube itself. See how many black people and how many white people fight all the time over race. Look it up and you'll see plenty of videos pop up and people in the comments section. Right? So I think that that's a message to say that, not per se that Abraham Lincoln was black, which I believe he has some black blood in him, quote unquote, which sounds dumb as hell, but I'm just saying it because that's what people say, bro. Black blood in you, whatever the hell that means. You get what I'm saying, right? Okay, black blood. All right, whatever. White blood. Oh yeah. Right? People mix. Whites sleep with blacks, blacks sleep with whites. I've met plenty of black sisters that are like, "I would only marry a black guy, or I only mess with black guys." And the next thing you know, I'm her Puerto Rican boyfriend now. Seen it a million times, bro. Or she's dating the white guy. That's all cap, you know? So I understand that people, so-called races mix. That's what it is. But in line with those examples, I think that was the message that what we're doing is the elite power structure, especially of that time, which would be a good old boys club, the Caucasian power structure. Predominantly, we know we have black brothers in power. We have our Michael Jordans of today that existed then. You get what I'm saying? And Michael Jordan's considered a part of the elite. You can't say just because he's black, he's not. He is. He's powerful, right? Oprah Winfrey, powerful. So they rub elbows with different elites, right? So I just think that the situation at that time was the good old boys club was like the major power structure, your typical racist Caucasian. So I think definitely them putting him on the brown coin was their way of saying, in our eyes, you are no longer a white man. You know what I mean? You're just as good as a black man, meaning you're beneath us. That's what I think. And I don't think it had anything to do with him freeing the slaves. I agree with Brother Righteous. I think their message in doing that, because if you look at those who are running the Federal Reserve Bank, I can assure you it's Caucasians. I can assure you that. That's for sure, right? So I think that was their way of saying, in our eyes now, because you went against the grain, you're just as low in our eyes as a black man is. That's what I think the message is. Not because of the Emancipation Proclamation, but like brother said, because of his economic opposition to what they were doing. Like, all right, first off, we're whacking you, and now we're going to forever stamp you as being as low as we see a black man as being in our eyes. And I think that was the indirect message. You know how mafia movies, they always show you, which is romanticized, you know what I mean? But it's romanticized, but in the mafia movies like Godfather, they'll show the old mobsters, leaving subliminal messages with the dead bodies. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's the subliminal message as to why we killed them. And this is part of what humans do. So my belief, ever since that whole Mason put me onto it, I believe that it's a subliminal message in the currency. Like in this case, these coins. Abraham Lincoln turned his back on the plan. He got whacked for it. And in our legacy, meaning the legacy of the United States of America, from the economic power structure side of things, he's forever labeled as being just as low as a black man is. You know what I mean? Meaning, if we labeled him that, that's what he is to us. Now hold that L. You know what I'm saying? Or hold that. Whenever you look at your coins, you're forever gonna see that indirectly. Because I find it beyond coincidence, bro. I just find it too much beyond coincidence that he's looking one way and the other presidents are looking the other way on the coins, and that his coin happens to be black, bro, or brown, and theirs happens to be white. You dig what I'm saying? But that's just food for thought, my brother. And you know that's my spill as far as why I think his coin is brown.
That's all she wrote for me. That unless you profound with the research and you can find some more information on it, we would definitely like to hear on it because we could bring this topic back up. But that was dope though. That was dope. I like that.
Yeah. So let me see. All right. Shout out to Larry Diamond. Greetings and peace to the East, brother. Brother Derek Bennett asked, "What is your outlook on John Henson?" And we'll matter of fact, let's talk about that before we leave, right? Because we're not going to go too much in detail with it, but let's talk about that before we leave because it's relevant to the situation. Also, for anybody who tunes in, check out Brother Righteous's other podcast channel, Solar Masters Ascending, on YouTube. The way you see it on the screen is how it's spelled. It's a play on words.
Exactly.
It's going to be a little bit hard for you to find the channel sometimes because I've looked for the channel myself in the beginning, and it's a generic type of title, so other things will pop up. You know what I mean? Like Solar Masters and all these different videos. But if you scroll down enough, you'll find it. You know what I mean? Or you could look at our prior lectures and you'll see some of his lectures and his channels. The link to his channel will be in there and you can just click on it. So he has a lot of different lectures out, dealing with economics, political science, meditation, all types of useful knowledge, but he approaches it from an esoteric perspective. All right. So now going back to what the brother said, and then we will sign off because it is relevant. Brother Derek Bennett asked, "What is your outlook on John Henson?"
That goes that kind of touches on what you mentioned earlier when we first started. Because some people credit him as being the first president, but a lot of people don't look at the organization of the presidency before the United States was even like constructed the way that it is. We're talking about the Article of Confederation's time frame. So, but again, the thing that people also have to take into account is, like I said, and I figured this out by teaching my students. I happened to be reading a history book and looking at the little pictures around the classroom. And I had noticed that George Washington didn't become the president until 1789. And the United States gained independence in 1776, July 4th to be exact. So 13 years, it appears as if the country was without a leader or a president. So the question is, who was governing the country for those 13 years or the 13 colonies or whatever? And it appears that John Henson was one of the first presidents in 1777. And they have a list of other guys and names who were running the country. Then you have George Washington erected as the first president of the United States in 1789, 13 years after these other guys were already handling
Hmm.
business, basically. So, it's some information out there, and each one of these guys, like John Hanson and the rest of them, they all ran for like 1 year. They was in term for like 1 year, 1 to 2 years at the max. But then that was it.
Right.
It was nothing more than that.
Right. Definitely. So, for individuals who study political science or the history of the United States of America, all you have to do is just take some time out and don't just believe anything you see these moral science temple of America charlatans talk. People make up anything nowadays. Like when we did the episode on the 3 child geniuses with some of the highest IQs, I came across articles that were blatantly lies. And they were coming from racist black publications that were lying about the information. And then when you go do your due diligence, you're like, why did you lie, bro? You just showed yourself to be a racist. Meaning that
Right.
you're a black racist. You know what I mean? Just like you have certain white racists who do that too. They put out false information, and your common man to see that, oh, it's a magazine, okay, it's a website, and it starts spreading it, and it spreads like wildfire. So so when you're dealing with political science and the history of the United States of America, when I did the research, and you'll find it in any collegiate encyclopedia, or you'll find it online, you just have to go to reputable sources. By reputable sources, I don't mean any particular company. I just mean anybody who is known to do thorough research and actually back up what they're saying with references that could be traced back soundly, right? So when I studied it, I looked into it, and then I found out that, as Brother Righteous mentioned, before we had the United States of America as we know it now, prior to that period, you have what are known as the Articles of Confederation. So the Articles of Confederation, it was like the precursor. That's the word I'm looking for. The precursor to the United States Constitution. So it was a set of laws, rules, to help the 13 colonies to govern themselves at that time. It dealt with all of those different situations that you see in the U.S. Constitution. So under the Articles of Confederation, the United States of America had different presidents. As Brother Righteous said, I think he's on point with that. Like they each served like a year, you know, a 1 year term or something to that effect. And the presidents from out of that, uh, the presidents that were under that regime, those were the presidents that they talk about as having been presidents before Abraham Lincoln. I mean, not Abraham Lincoln, I'm sorry, but before George Washington. So it's not that the United States government doesn't know this, and woo, you stumbled upon some super secret knowledge that the government is hiding from you. That's well known. And if you like, every September is Constitution Month in the United States of America. So every September, the government gives free civic classes. You could go online and take them. You get a certificate and everything to show that you've attended classes and you've taken an examination to show that you understand the U.S. Constitution, that you understand the basic history of the foundation of the United States of America, etc. Every September, the government gives that out for free. Every September. So it's not a secret that before the United States of America as we know it now had a different structure prior to that. So prior to that structure, you had different presidents under the Articles of a Confederation, and John Henson was one of those presidents. Now, it is said that he was black. That's what they say. So what I would say is do your research on it. Is it impossible? Absolutely not, because you have free blacks at that time. Everybody that was black wasn't a slave. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. So you did have free blacks, and you also had free blacks who had black slaves themselves. So it is plausible, to believe that in that time where there were no photos for the most part. Remember, if you see anything dealing with George Washington, it was painted. You don't have photos of George Washington as portraits. So at that time, it was very easy to whitewash individuals. It was very easy to do, especially when you're dealing with politics. If I wanted to communicate to somebody that was down south, something that was coming from the north, do you think if we had a black government representative in the north that we would want to publish him in the newspaper as being black? Of course not. Because if we're trying to persuade these southern racist Caucasians to go in line with something that we're putting out there, we want our representative to look white. You know what I mean? It's all about appeal. Just like Brother Righteous was saying earlier to me in a private conversation. We may present ourselves a certain way at the workplace, or we may present ourselves a certain way on a news interview. We may conduct ourselves totally different off camera. You know what I mean? So you want to present yourself in a certain way. So with that being the case with John Henson, look into it. But he certainly was a president before Washington was, but under the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah,
George Washington is the first president of the United States under the United States Constitution, which is what the official United States of America is considered as being.
So for anybody, it was underneath the Articles of Confederation. The way that we would say it for the viewers is the president of the Continental Congress. That's what it was called.
There you go.
That's how they referred to the government back then. So in each of them, I was just looking at some of the numbers. Some of them served 14 days. Some of them served 47. Some served exactly a year. Some served 295 days, just about a year. So everybody's term was a little bit different, but they were pretty much just keeping control on everything until the formation of what we have now was fully erected. And I got some information from my university that I was looking over in the textbooks and stuff that they speak about where they got the how they even formed the government the way that it is now, where they got it from. But we'll talk about that on another video, because I showed one of the other brothers in the lodge, and he was kind of like, oh, all right. Where the United States government, like just the blueprint for it came from. And I'll give you a hint of who basically gave
and
who said it. Benjamin Franklin basically exposed where they got the United States government from, what culture they took it from. But we'll talk about that on another show.
Right. So definitely, and that's beautiful that you mentioned that, brother. You said Continental Congress, right?
Right, correct.
Beautiful. So when individuals, like I said, when they think, oh, I stumbled on some secret knowledge, Washington wasn't the first president. Yes, he was, of the United States of America. Why? Because prior to that, you had the Continental Congress and you had the Articles of Confederation, which was the Constitution for that government structure. Once it became the United States of America, that's where we have the U.S. Constitution, and that's where George Washington is the first president. So when you go into any court building or any government building and you see the list of presidents of the United States of America, they're not slow. They know, yes, George Washington was the first president under the United States of America. Prior to that, it was a different structure. So now if you see a poster that says the presidents under the Continental Congress, you're going to see exactly what he said. You're going to see John Henson, and you're going to see a number of other individuals. Just like with Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was a shaker and mover. He was considered the president of Pennsylvania in his time. He was considered that because this dude, he was a pioneer in Pennsylvania. So you see him on a $100 bill for a reason, even though he was never a president of the United States of America. So very interesting stuff. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're gonna get out of here. I'm gonna have some fried chicken and some pizza and all of that. Brother Righteous, if you have any parting words or words of advice for the audience, Do
As
your
I
thing,
say
and
on
then
my
when we out of here.
as
Uh-huh.
I say on
Go
my
ahead, bro.
channel, keep your spirits high with the positive vibes because you are royalty until the day that you die. If anybody needs any life coaching services, hit me up on my YouTube channel, Solar Masters Ascending. I'll hook you up, get some emails going on or whatever, and get you set up because I realized that 2020 and 2021 has been stressful for a lot of people. So I just want to help individuals get their life back on track. So I'll make a video dedicated
Right,
strictly to that so I can get a better understanding, and that'll be that. But that's my piece, y'all.
right. And definitely, and anybody, because we do have subscribers, like we have brother Freemasons who are lawyers who subscribe to our channel. Or we have all type of individuals who are subscribed to our Light Network, who are in the government, police officers, stuff like that, that are Freemasons. So it's good the brother mentioned that for anybody that's serious, because what we do is we put the work in. It does you no good to just listen to lectures and try to eavesdrop upon the information and you don't use it. That makes no sense. You know what I mean? So definitely check out Brother Righteous's podcast if you're interested in the life coaching thing, because that's what he does. Um, and yeah, we got some other things going on. Or for anybody who wants to participate, or if you got something going on, like us, we're in New York. You know what I mean? Certain brothers invite us to different places, which is always appreciated. To grand sessions dealing with masonry and stuff like that in other states and cities. But as far as New York, or even other cities or states, if individuals need help with that type of stuff, like how to become a life coach, a certified recovery coach, or these types of things, we could help you. The thing is that you got to put into it. Nobody's giving you nothing for free unless they know that you're going to put the work in. Like me, I'm not giving nobody nothing for free unless I know they putting work in. Because my time is too precious. It's way too valuable for me to sit teaching somebody for 6 hours who, you know, the person that comes to the barbecue and they just trying to get a free plate, and you like, yo, who is this guy? You asking your cousins like, yo, anybody? He's one of our distant relatives, and they like, we don't know him, and you got to chase him out of the barbecue. You feel me? And the person don't even have the common courtesy to come with a 2-liter soda. You know what I mean? Or to come with some napkins, or to come with a couple of steaks, you know what I mean? Or come with some potato chips even. So, but yeah, so for anybody that's interested in that type of thing, like the brother said, life coaching, etc., or you need help, with the lectures we will give for free. That part we will give for free. So you can always leave us a comment or an email. Like, yo, maybe I could do an episode on this that could help me to get into this field. And we'll do it like that because it reaches more people, especially when it's free. We got to put the work in. So, so we down for that all the time, man. So for anybody that's involved, and I will say for a lot of our subscribers, a lot of them don't comment, but for the brothers, a lot of the brothers and sisters that I communicate with that subscribe outside of YouTube, a lot of them are serious about their business, man. They really contribute. They contribute to what we do, even in the community. Some of the brothers that are police officers, some of the brothers that are politicians. I'm saying Masonic brothers and Hermetic philosophers and whatnot, Rosicrucians and so on and so forth. And they really do contribute, man. Outside of YouTube, I'm saying that subscribe to our channel. And that's a good thing. I love to see that because that's what we expect, man. Put the knowledge into application. So if anybody has things like that going on, we're open to that. Or if you have something going on in New York City or maybe Miami, and you're like, oh, we doing this thing for the youth, and come on out and let's do it. We with that 100%. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say on that, man. And on my end, definitely, man, thank you to all of the subscribers. It's gonna be slow growth because we're not gonna get on the channel and talk about meaningless stuff. You know what I mean? And people gravitate more towards negativity than they do towards positivity. So we're not out here selling our souls, as you would say. You know what I mean? Talking about rappers all day and what does this do for our community? Nothing. It would put money in our pockets for sure. You know what I mean? And for those who subscribe, at the least you could do, at the least what you could do is watch the commercials. Don't skip the ads. So this way that money goes into our channel and we could continue to expand it. That puts money in our pockets. If you don't donate like through Cash App or PayPal or any of that, just watch the commercials. And if you don't do that, share it. If you don't do that, leave comments, leave insight, leave wisdom, recommend books. We're not going to block your comments or anything unless you come on our platform indulging in black on black crime, trying to, you see how YouTube tells you keep your comments respectable. It tells you that. You could disagree with individuals, that's fine, but keep it respectable means don't call people names. That's out of line, that's out of pocket, right? So with that being said, Brother Righteous signed off because he has something to do. I'm gonna go eat. And definitely. All right, so thank y'all. And what we'll do is we'll come on next episode, right? With some more great content. Thanks all of y'all. Enjoy yourselves. God bless you. God bless your family. Peace.